What's crack-a-lackin', everybody? My name is Alex, and welcome back to the Back on Track podcast. You probably already figured out that something's a little bit different this week, and it's just me today, just Alex. Beckett and Cage couldn't make it today because they were lame and scheduled other things in place of recording for some reason. And I guess we just couldn't make it work with all of us, so it's just going to be me today. I'm probably going to have a little bit of trouble keeping this rolling, so bear with me, because it's just me today, as I've already said like 7 times. You know, it's probably going to be a shorter episode, but we've got a lot of stuff that I really wanted to, set forth and, make known. So we got current events, we're actually going to be answering a bunch of questions that we haven't answered yet. And we also have a segment on the gender pay gap, which, foreshadowing, I don't think it's real because, I'll lay that out like when I get to that. So I think we should just get right into it. So, we had a few things happen this week. One of the main things that happened was I'm going to butcher the name and I don't really care. Lil Nas X, I can't tell you how to say it. And Mischief, that I believe that's how you say the company's name. They released Satan shoes. That sounds like a joke. It's not even a joke. And a lot of people have said this, but we're at the point where Mr. Potato Head wasn't woke enough, but Satan shoes flew by without an issue. And for those who don't know, they're basically just shoes where they're, I want to say like 1997 Nikes that have a bunch of satanic stuff on them. So, like the upside down cross, the pentagram, 666, stuff like that. And from what the claims are, this is claimed by the actual company. They have a drop of human blood in them, which is very creepy. I don't know where they got the blood from, but nonetheless, still kind of creepy. And the sale of the shoes actually went live on Monday, and they're only selling 666 pairs. Obviously, they sold out in less than a minute, less than a minute, and they were selling for like $1,000 each. So a lot of cash that came in under a minute. And so the whole thing with this is Nike actually wasn't involved in it. At least that's what they claimed. So they sent a cease and desist letter to Lil Nas X. I love how I'm butchering the name. And because he didn't use their name and logo with permission, he just used it and they said like, oh, we don't care, so we're going to push them out. But the Church of Satan did endorse the shoes on Twitter. So, I guess he's standing in as like their right-hand man because he made Satan shoes. It's just a whole really bizarre thing. I think it's kind of gross and almost like insulting because that's just normal now because it's not even like out of the normal, right? It's kind of horrible. But I'm going to move on from that. Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota vetoed the bill that was designed to protect women's sports from transgenders playing. Remember, we talked last week about how we feel about transgenders playing in sports, in women's sports specifically. And it kind of looks weak on her part, but we're going to have to see how it ends up. But she was promising that she was going to sign the bill to protect women's sports, but she didn't do it, and she ended up vetoing it. So it's kind of like she's backpedaling almost in order to, feed the corporations that don't want her to do it. There's more details, but I'm not entirely sure like what the whole situation is because apparently she might have vetoed it for a reason. I'm not sure though, because it still just kind of looks a little funky. Also in the news this whole past week, for almost a week now, the Suez Canal in Egypt has been blocked off by a massive container ship called the Ever Given. I want to say it's owned by a company called Evergreen. I was getting the name and the company name mixed up. The ship is called the Ever Given. And according to U.S. News, about 12% of global trade by volume goes through the Suez Canal, but it accounts for 30% of the world's daily shipping container freight. So 12% of the world's trade was kind of just halted for the week because it was blocking the entire canal. From what I heard today, it's partially removed from the canal, partially free from the canal, if in those words. It's working. I guess they're working on getting it out, but it's going to be a process still, I'm sure, to get it out and completely open and working. Next up, the White House has announced that they are looking into vaccine passports. So it's not just, fiction anymore. And basically they would show whether or not you've been vaccinated so you can travel and get into businesses. It's really scary stuff because for the longest time, people are saying that, oh, it's just a conspiracy that's never going to happen. But now you might have to get a vaccine in order just to walk into Walgreens, for example, or fly to your vacation or something like that. So I think, it's something we have to fight against because it's kind of like Orwellian. Like this is something you would see in 1984, and now it's coming to America. They instated it in Israel a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, and it's here. It's not a joke. It's real. And the last thing I'm going to go through is this week there have been multiple shootings that have happened across the country, which have just caused Democrats to call for more gun control. And that's kind of typical though, because they always use a tragedy to further a political agenda. Nothing new there. But spoiler alert, gun control doesn't really work. The shooting that just happened in Boulder, in Colorado, happened in a state with multiple gun laws that are designed to make that not happen. And every single restriction that the left wants to impose in the entire country was present in Boulder, and it still didn't stop it. Colorado has universal background check laws, red flag confiscation laws, and high-capacity magazine bans, as well as Boulder having an assault weapons ban, but it didn't stop the shooter there. So, it's really just a way to take rights away from law-abiding citizens. The best case against gun control is that criminals don't abide by the law. That's what makes them criminals. Selling cocaine is illegal, but people do it anyway. Gun control would just, like I said, make it harder for law-abiding citizens to protect themselves. Meanwhile, celebrities are calling the shooting an act of white supremacy, but the shooter wasn't even white. It's the whole goal of the left is to just demonize white people, as you've seen. But like with the Asian hate crimes thing, when in reality, like 86% of Asian hate crimes are perpetrated by Black assailants. I'm not going to get into that, but it's just they changed the numbers almost in order to demonize white people. So a lot of stuff happened this week. It's not looking too great, but with that said, I'm going to get into my planned segment on the gender pay gap. Now, the gender pay gap is not a new topic. It's been around for a while now, but is there any basis to it? That's what I'm really going to dig into today. And my main question is, do women really get paid 70 cents on the dollar compared to men? Because I think from what you hear from like mainstream media and social media and stuff like that, if you just read what you saw, you might actually believe that and say, oh, that's kind of makes a little bit of sense. I guess that must be true. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to answer the question now, and then I'll go into why I think what I think. But before I do that, I'd like to let everyone know that I don't care what you think about me speaking on subjects like this. It happened with the abortion topic, and it's probably going to happen with this. Just because it's a women's issue doesn't mean men can't speak up on it. Facts are facts, regardless of what your gender is, right? So here I go. No, there is no gender pay gap. There you go. I said it. Now here's why. Number one, women have children and men do not. That seems pretty simple. If you disagree with that, I hate to say it, but you're wrong. And I'm going to explain this. There's not much more to explain there. Women have children and men do not. So basically, because of the fact that women have kids, in a lot of situations, they have to take care of their kids, even more so in the earlier years after birth. This isn't any less noble than having a fancy job. I mean, women caring for children is incredibly important, and it's a job in and of itself. When a woman has children, they are less likely to take on jobs that put them at a greater risk. It's just a fact. I mean, think about it this way. If you're a woman with young children and you had the choice between being an office secretary, that's just an example, nothing against women, or working on an oil rig, what would you choose? I feel like most women would probably pick the desk job even though they might have a chance at making higher money on an oil rig because they have young children and they need to be there for them. That kind of makes sense, and I feel like you would agree. Number 2, many of the studies that claim that there's a gender pay gap don't take job intensity, hours worked, education, position, like position being like what job they're at in their company, and industry into account. As quoted by Forbes, one of the most liberal publications in America, quote, "The official Bureau of Labor Department statistics shows that the median earnings of full-time female workers is 77% of the median earnings of full-time male workers. But that is different from 77 cents on the dollar for doing the same work as men. The latter gives the impression that a man and a woman standing next to each other doing the same job for the same number of hours get paid different salaries. That is not at all the case. Full-time actually means 35 hours. That's official based on the Department of Labor Statistics. But men work more hours than women, and that's the problem. We could be comparing men working 40 hours to women working 35. So basically, I'm going to sum this up because that was a lot of words there. What it's saying is because female workers make 77% of the median earnings of full-time male workers. That means that that actually does mean that for every dollar that a man makes, a woman makes 77 cents. However, that doesn't take any factors into account. So let's say a man makes $100,000 a year on average. That's what the median is. For women, it's probably closer to 77,000 because it doesn't take into account that they are working less hours on average, 5 hours a week on average, just to be specific. So as you can see, just comparing the median income only shows the numbers that aren't adjusted for those factors. Some say that women are coerced into picking childbearing and lower intensity jobs over what they really want, but that's also been determined to not be the case. I quote from Time, "American women are among the best informed and most self-determining human beings in the world. To say that they are manipulated into their life choices by forces beyond their control is divorced from reality and demeaning to boot." So both Time and Forbes, they're not conservative, journalism, if you know what I'm saying. But they both debunked the whole 77 cents on the dollar theory just by saying it how it is. I'm not going to go into it, but Time also debunked male privilege in the same article, even though, you can probably guess how I feel about male privilege, but I'm not going to get into that just because I really shouldn't right now. But it's not much of a surprise that men are bigger and stronger on average than women. We mentioned this last episode with regards to transgenders in women's sports, and we also clarified that there are absolutely women that could easily take us down. But that's the exception. I mean, obviously, I'm not a weightlifter, I'm not a bodybuilder, and there are women that are way stronger than I am, but that's not the point because that's not the average of what women are. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, men work on average about 45 minutes more per day than women do, which also affects take-home pay. Think about it. If you work more hours in the week, you're probably going to make more money. It's kind of just like cause and effect. According to the Suffolk Journal, Georgetown University compiled a study of the 5 best-paying college majors and the percentage of men and women majoring in those fields. The petroleum engineering major is typically 87% male. Pharmaceutical science is 48% male. Mathematics and computer science is 67% male. Aerospace engineering is 88% male. Chemical engineering is 72% male. Notice, women outnumber men in only one of those categories. So what it's saying is, the highest paying jobs are typically not filled by women because they don't even take the college route to get there. If you don't major in pharmaceutical science in college, your odds of getting a job in pharmaceutical science are very low. So that's why a lot of these high paying fields don't have a lot of women in them. It's because of the routes they take in college, which remember, these are just facts. I can't argue against them. But the point is, if you put a woman right next to a man who has the same education and experience, as well as the same position in the same company, it is very highly likely that they are making almost exactly the same amount of money per year. like on a salary basis. Now, I'm going to get into number 3, and let's just say, all right, you're right. Women make 70-ish cents on the dollar compared to men. You won. But if that's the case, then answer me this. Why wouldn't businesses hire only women? If they can pay them less, then they are the best investment you could possibly make. You could either have increased profit or more people working for you for the same cost. It doesn't make any sense. And that's the issue I have with this. Like, if I'm a business owner, right, I care about profit, obviously, because this is how I feed my family. This is how I go on vacations, stuff like that. Well, the idea that I wouldn't just hire women if I could pay them less is kind of stupid, if you ask me. And if your answer is because systemic sexism or the workplace is dominated by males, then your argument doesn't make sense either, because regardless, 99% of business owners would rather have money than care about the gender of their workers. That's just across the board. So, looking at these 3 things, you kind of have to definitively say that the gender pay gap is a myth perpetuated by the left just to make men look evil. But when you look at the facts, it really has no backing to it. And because that's just, you just look at the college majors and you look at the average numbers of hours worked in the fields that women typically go into out of college, and that's what leads to them typically making less money. If you have, a very capable woman and you have a slightly less capable man, odds are the woman is going to get picked for the same job as long as they have the experience and the background to support it. So that's where I stand on the gender pay gap. Remember, I cannot speak for Beckett and Cage because they are not here today. However, these are my thoughts, and I feel like they might have some similar ideas, which we could obviously get into in the next episode if we did a callback to this episode. With that said, I'm going to end this segment on the gender pay gap, and we're going to go into our question segment. So, roll the intro.
We're answering your questions.
All right. Well, you guys submitted some questions, and I wanted to answer them because, 1, I need content, and 2, these are your questions, so I feel like we should kind of answer those because we promised to answer questions. So we're going to start with the first one. How does the $1.9 trillion stimulus bill affect me as a teenage American? That is oddly specific, but an excellent question nonetheless, and I think it's one that we are not asking enough. Now, for the most part, it's probably not going to have an effect on you right now, but it will have one down the line, and I'll get into that. But before I do that, I will say, if I'm correct, you might even receive one of the $1,400 direct payments, depending on whether or not you file your own tax return and whether or not your parents claim you as a dependent. So, interesting fun fact. If you accidentally get a $1,200 check in the mail, $1,400 check in the mail. $1,200 was last time, a couple times ago. But before, that's now, right? There's going to be effects that lead into the future. So while the direct payments might be $1,400 each right now, estimates have shown that the future cost to taxpayers could be as high as $5,750 per person in taxes owed at some point or another. And this is especially problematic for younger generations because they're going to be stuck footing the bill when this, debt comes into effect. So, in 20, 30 years, remember, the national debt, I'm pretty sure it just hit like $30 trillion, which is an insane amount of money. But when the government is printing money like left and right, 1.9 trillion here or 3 trillion here, it adds up really quickly, and money doesn't grow on trees. Money has to come from somewhere. And at some point, the national debt is going to have to get paid off, which is kind of something a little bit scary to realize, because as a teenager myself, that might be something that I might be paying for in the future, which I really don't agree with. And that's why I've been, so against these stimulus packages, even though they are designed to help businesses and give money to, people who might need it. It's a really terrible thing for the future because it's just going to destroy the next generations who are going to have to pay for it. So thank you for that question. I really appreciate that. On to the next question. How can I help become a bigger part in securing my freedoms? Another great question. Well, I would say this one is important because we can talk as much as we want about how terrible things are going if how they're going to get if so and so happens or if so and so gets into office, but none of it matters if we don't take action. So a large part of our audience is very young. I'm almost positive. So most of the following actions I'm going to give you are focused on young people. This first one though is not. This applies to everyone. Number 1, you can call, email, message, however you want to get into contact with your local representatives, as well as your state senators, and tell them about issues that are important to you. If enough people do this, they will be cornered because it's dangerous to make decisions that go against your voting base, or else you might not get reelected. So, reach out to senators, representatives, your board of commissioners in your county, stuff like that, even your city leadership. Make sure they know that you want them to vote a certain way because you kind of put them into office, more or less, right? The next thing, you can join conservative clubs and organizations that are committed to fighting for your rights. An example might be something like a Turning Point USA, becoming an ambassador for them, or joining Prager Force by PragerU. These are all things that you can do to get together with other people, like-minded people that are there to get the same goals accomplished as you are. Next thing I would say is talk to your friends. There's power in numbers, and the more people you can get behind a movement, the more weight it carries, which is why it's important to share the message as much as possible. Before I go into the next thing, I will say, speaking of sharing, you should share this with all of your friends. This episode, wherever you're listening to it, I am 99.999% sure that there's a button to share it with someone somewhere. So, pass it along. Follow us on social media. Help you get the message out. This is how we're trying to take action, and through this, we're going to help you take action. Now, these are just a few examples, but with work and commitment, these things can get things done. These things can get things done. That sounds so nice. And the last and final question, those mean the same thing. What are your thoughts on boycotts? As I mentioned before, I cannot speak for Beckett and Cage, especially since they aren't here today. But my personal opinion is, it depends. I would say I am strongly against boycotts that are solely based on the fact that a company has a different political opinion. America is a place where people have the freedom to think differently, and by saying that everyone should stop buying a company's products because you don't agree with them is stupid. It's flat out stupid. Because America is a place where everyone can do what they want. If just because my friend owns a company and he has different political opinions than I do, doesn't mean I shouldn't buy his, great product, because that's up to him, and it's up to me. However, I will say, in cases where the company has severely bad morals and bad practices, I am totally okay with it. We'll just make an example. Nike. That's the example. Now, I want you to keep in mind, this is completely separate from the whole Satan shoes thing, because from what it seems, they had no involvement with that. But I will say, Nike has been known to exploit sweatshops and Uyghur Muslims in their sources of labor, with horrible working conditions in China. Before I continue, remember all of our sources are at sources.backontrack.com. You can fact check us, find all of our articles and all of our notes, just so you know that we're not making this up. Now back into it. A company like this, like Nike, I have no problem boycotting and telling everyone else to do the same, because they are abusing humans. That is completely different than the first type of boycott I mentioned. I don't believe in supporting companies that literally hate you or, abuse people like Nike does. I would be fine supporting a company that just has a different opinion than I do, right? Like I do sometimes. I don't check everything. But as I mentioned a couple episodes ago, it's about, voting with your dollar. Spend your money in what you believe in, right? So maybe buy American-made products because you love America and you believe in America first. Or don't buy Nike because you don't believe in exploiting Muslims, right? So it's all about just making this decision of where's your dollar going to go. And that's how that's actually something that should really go towards question number 1, question number 2 on how can I instill change. Vote with your dollar. Use it on things that companies that will put your dollar in the best place. So those are all the questions we got. So I'm probably gonna start wrapping it up. I will say this has been a great episode, and I am very surprised that I was able to keep it going for this long. Remember, we have a fundraiser, and we're actually in the studio now, so we're prioritizing getting video to you. It's gonna take a while, and we still need money to do it, but we are 25% of the way to our $6,500 goal. Remember, you can donate at donate.backontrack.com. Through PayPal, and I'm pretty sure you can use credit card as well. Remember to share this with your family and friends as much as possible, because this is stuff we want to bring to you. We talked in the last episode about our vision for the future of the podcast, and it's something that, it means a lot to us, and if we were able to bring that to more people, we think it would be a great way to, impact the world. In America, actually, mostly more than the world. But remember, everything helps. So if you can only donate $1, I mean, that's $1 that can be used to pay for something. If you can donate $1,000, listen, that's pretty awesome too. But remember, this is not a sponsorship, they're just donations, so please don't expect a shout out. Currently, all of our sponsors are fake made up sponsors, and that's how we like it. So with that said, I'm going to close it out. Remember, you can email your questions, thoughts, and concerns to info@backontrack.com. Our beautiful website, made by me, yours truly, is backontrack.com if you didn't figure that out already. So you can go there to look at all of our cool stuff, learn a little bit more about us, and you can see all of our episodes there. Remember, keep sending in questions and emails to us, because as you can see right now, we answer them. And it's actually a lot of fun coming up with the answers, so we can, do the research on all that. Remember, we are on social media and we have YouTube. Please subscribe to us on YouTube, because I feel like that's going to be big in the future for the podcast. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Remember, we're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, all at Back on Track Podcast, except Twitter, which is at Back on Track Pod, P-O-D, because they're stupid and they wouldn't let us have the full handle. Boo. Remember, if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, you can subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one of our episodes. But all of our episodes come at Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time, so you know when to expect it. With that said, this has been the Back on Track podcast, and I personally, Alex, I just flew solo, and I'm now signing off.